Atapu, assalamu alaikum, namaste. This is Kasank Ma Keparu with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk about the truth about how reincarnation works. And I'm going to use a case study, my own life experience as the case study. But before I go into this subject matter, please hit the like button below and subscribe to my channel if this is your first time watching, and share this video with family and friends. We need to get the subscriber count up. I would love to reach 5,000 subscribers with your help. So please pass the word along if you're enjoying these videos and enjoying the information I am spreading. So let's keep this movement going. Let's keep this revolution going so we can shift the planet from left brain thinking to whole brain, integrated brain thinking, or 5D thinking. Now, in my last broadcast, we had some technical issues with the broadcast. Please let me know if I seem to be coming off choppy or pixelated, and I'll try to correct that as much as possible. Hetepu aset ma'at hetepu. So as the Magi come into the chat room, we will get things started. Let me just give them a little bit of time. So I just want to cover a little bit what I said in my previous video, which was specifically about how to ascend to the fifth dimension. And one of the things I talked about in that video, just to give you a recap, if you haven't seen the video, go back and watch it. The broadcast wasn't that great, but the sound is still audible, so you'll be able to hear it. But one of the things I talked about is that the idea of when I first came out as a priest was I was teaching about left and right brain integration. And a lot of people out there, scholars and Egyptologists, were trying to figure out how did the ancient Egyptians or Kemetic people build such a wonderful society, because society reached its zenith in ancient Kemet. And I was one of the few people who was talking about that they were able to do this through whole mind thinking to holistic thinking. And that, specifically Europeans are raised in a colder climate, which is deficient in vitamin D, which gave rise to left brain polarized thinking. And mostly African people who are brought up in Africa, the tropical climate in the mass continent of Pangaea, were integrated whole brain thinkers or right brain thinkers. So that perspective radically changes how the earth comes into being, meaning that if you understand that you're a reality generating machine, and if you're polarized in one aspect of thinking, then the reality that you created is going to be skewed in a way. And when that reality is skewed because you're thinking out of the left brain, you give rise to an evil force on the planet that is controlling the majority of people. 99% of the people is 1%. The Illuminati is controlling 99% of the people in the population. And the reason that they're able to do that, the reason that they're able to come into existence, along with Hitler and Mussolini, King Leopold, all of these mass murderers, the reason why they're able to come into existence is because you're shifting to a universe to where they exist based on your vibrational frequency. Well, where does the vibrational frequency come from then? The vibrational frequency, the resonance, is coming from you thinking polarized thinking from the left brain. That's where, because when you're not a whole brain thinker, a holistic thinker, then you give rise to things like sexism, racism, poverty, war, destruction of the ecosystem of the planet. These things we will shift to experience until we correct our thinking. Now, in the video about 5D, I talked about that. And the problem that we're having on this planet is many so-called scholars and scientists have come along and placed the blame on the effects and not the cause. So the blame was placed primarily on certain enclaves of people or certain groups, like special interest groups, like, oh, it's the feminists, oh, it's the right to lifers or whatever. But, when I talked about that, you just got to go and look at the cause. People started to realize that, hey, you know what? He has something there. He's talking about how the brain is structured in terms of, thinking using the mammalian and reptilian brain, acting primarily on the emotions, and using the left brain coupled with that creates a disastrous effect on the planet and in our lives. So instead of people talking about this in terms of the scientific terms or physiology, they really looked at the occult New Age terminology of ascending to 5D. And I said I was fine with that. There's no problem with that. Long as we understand that 5D really means holistic thinking, and that 5D has the absence of time and space. So the minute you think of something, it instantaneously appears. And the prerequisite to getting to 5D, is, of course, is holistic thinking, integrated brain thinking. Because we have too many people on the planet thinking that the problem with the planet is that we're not spiritual enough. It has nothing to do with spirituality. That is a byproduct of thinking integrated brain thinking or ascending to 5-dimensional thinking or a 5th dimension. It's a byproduct. You become spiritual in that sense, you know? So keep that in mind. But specifically in this video, I want to talk about reincarnation and the purpose of that and the importance of that. Because when you start to understand, when you start to ascend to 5D thinking, you start to think holistically. And what happens? We live in a society that's afraid to talk about death, that's afraid to talk about the afterlife, that's afraid to talk about the metaphysical aspects of multi-dimensions. So that doesn't recognize the fact that, you know, that we are composed of mostly light. And we're living in a light matrix, and that we are merely projections from a projector somewhere out there. So that means that there is a base reality, a real reality that is the template for what we are. And I want you to think about that. So in the same vein, you have to look at and say, we are here based on the products of our ancestors. We would not be here if it was not for our ancestors. That's holistic thinking, where you have these Egyptologists who came along, and when they studied ancient Kemet and ancient Egypt, one of the first things they said was the ancient Egyptians had a infatuation with death. And that is not true. That we embraced death, we embraced the afterlife, we had no fear of it. So you're living in a world that's fear-based programming, because they need to keep you away from non-Western religions. They need to keep you away from meditation, hypnosis, hypnotherapy. They need to keep you away from these things, because when you start to delve into these things, crystal healing and things of that nature, or investigating the lost city of Atlantis, then you start to discover secret knowledge, alchemy. And when you start to discover that, you start to empower yourself and then shift to 5D. And then when you shift to 5D, you shift to a parallel world to where the ruling elite does not exist. You basically kill the Illuminati. So this is what they don't want you to do, because for them to be in existence, it's not about you giving up your physical rights. It's not about you just ignoring them, like allowing them to do the things that they're doing, put in policies, put in laws, and you take no direct action to vote into politicians that will counteract their laws. It's not about that. It's really about your thinking. Because once you shift to 5D thinking, once you shift to holistic thinking, then you, as a reality generating machine, shift to a parallel world to where they do not exist. That is the key. And just the last summation is that one of the things I talked about was that we all don't exist in the same space-time continuum. That is a lie. Obama, Trump, I don't know, who's Ricky Martin, J-Lo, Brad Pitt. All of these individuals exist in their own time frame, time-space bubble. And that is only through resonating a certain frequency do I allow us to come into contact with each other and to interact with each other. The same goes for your friends and family members. You tune to a certain frequency in order to interact with them, because everything is frequency, because we know that everything vibrates on a very quantum level. You're composed of subatomic particles that vibrate. It's not static. And that vibration, that creates a frequency. And you have within you a core frequency that you emanate. And that core frequency determines your destiny in life. Now, you can change the core frequency, or it's very difficult. Sometimes you can only change it temporarily, all right? But it can change. Now, one of the things that we have to take into consideration is that if you're going through this existence without an understanding of who you were in a past life, then you're not living a whole and complete life. Because the reason that you are here today is because that you did not finish something you were supposed to complete in a past life. And because the society doesn't teach you about past life regression, researching who you were in a past life, because they don't take the subject matter seriously. Well, they actually do take it seriously. They take it seriously enough to try to debunk it. They take it seriously enough to steer you away from it, because they know the consequences of teaching you this esoteric knowledge is that you will shift to a parallel world to where they don't exist. So they don't want you to understand your past life. You have to keep this in mind, that civilization reached its zenith in Africa. So when we talk about all the mighty kingdoms and the high culture of the world came out of Africa, came out of whole brain thinking. So when you want to know how did Egypt reach the pinnacle of civilization, how did ancient Atlantis become such an advanced civilization? The only way you can look at it is in terms of reincarnation, because they understood that you are consciousness. You are not the body. You are not a race. You're not a nationality. You're not a political affiliation. And that when you pass on, you are reborn. You find another body. You make an agreement with Thoth, Tahuti, Hermes, Trismegistus. You make an agreement with him to come to this planet again to accomplish a goal. And your ancestors, past and future, you're born into a family line who is supposed to do an oracle reading to determine what you did in your past life. And in your past life, if you were a famous Ma'at, mathematician, because Ma'at is where we get math from, if you were a mathematician, then they would say, well, in your past life, you were a mathematician. So in this life, we want you to continue on in that subject matter. Therefore, you will grow and make advancements in that subject matter, advancing the field. If you were an engineer in your past life, they would do the reading, and the reading with the oracle would reveal, oh, he was a great engineer. He must now continue that field to help society and himself grow. This is how you produce the geniuses of a Nikola Tesla, an Einstein, a Galileo. Because these individuals are just being reborn and picking up where they left off and helping to contribute to society. But this society, so corrupt that it is, just says, go whatever you feel. If you feel like being an actor, be an actor, even though the success rate for actors is abysmal. If you feel like being a rap star, be a rap star. Let me give you guys some insight into that. The majority of your actors and your rappers are selected. They're chosen. Your Cardi B's, your Nicki Minaj's. These individuals did not just come out there and make it and climb to the top because of their talent. No, they were chosen by the ruling elite to program the masses of the people. So if you think you're going to come out there, you're going to be, you know, the next Kanye West, you got another thing coming. These individuals are pre-selected. Just like I said, if you look at the corporate world, the CEOs in the major corporations, they have occult affiliations. They were selected for their roles. So climbing, thinking that you're going to really work hard, study hard, go to business school, climb the corporate ladder, and get to a place where you'll be paid millions of dollars as the head of the corporation. That's not how it works. So when you think about this president will come into power, and you think this president has good intentions because he teaches about change. No, that's not how it works. That president is pre-selected by the ruling elite. And the whole voting thing is really just a smoke and mirrors. It's a show. Because ultimately, the ruling elite, they're backing both sides. So no matter who wins, they win. But I digress on this point. So I want to say Hetepu to Nikki, the house of Lemira, Hetepu. Sorry about that. Somebody was trying to call me there. But anyway, these individuals are specifically chosen because they have to put in place the mind programming. They have to keep that going. You understand what I'm saying? They cannot allow you to think for yourself. They cannot allow you to start delving into occult wisdom and knowledge. This is why anything dealing with meditation, holistic medicine, interdimensional travel is aggressively put down. Aggressively put down. Why is that? Think about that. Why? Namaste, Suan. El Glass, Hetepu. Deborah, namaste. Michael, Hetepu. Why is that? They're always attacking these things because they don't want you to know. And then they put in place their taskmasters, which is the Christian ministers and the Catholic priests, who are most of them are pedophiles anyway. And they have an association with the occult, but they don't want you to know that. Why do you think that one of the first directives was to wipe out the Native Americans on this soil, on this land? They had to get rid of the shaman and shawomen, the priests, priestesses, the medicine men and the medicine women. They had to get rid of them before these individuals, these wise individuals, could teach and propagate. George Lucas. It's well known that George Lucas is not only a phenomenal filmmaker and storyteller, but he has occult wisdom and knowledge. And in Star Wars, he was trying to tell you the secrets of what happened on the planet. When he did the movie Star Wars, what did he say the Empire did? The first directive the Empire did. They killed the Jedis. And who are the Jedis? They're the shaman. They're the priests. So that's what this society had to do. It had to go to Africa and kill the African priests. It had to kill the Native American medicine men and medicine women. Because and they had to put in place your Christian ministers. What do you think the witch trials were about? You have a society that does not support right brain thinking. They always want left brain thinking. Right brain thinking is associated with the moon. The moon is associated with the female principle. Understand what I'm saying. The moon is associated with the female principle. So in the witch trials and the witch hunts, who did they try to kill? The women. Why? Because the women were the first priests and priestesses. They had to get rid of them. You know why? Because they did not want them to resurrect that culture again. Because who was chiefly responsible for resurrecting Osir? Isis, Oset. The resurrection of Osir is the resurrection of truth. The bringing back of truth. And in that story of Asar Set, it's trying to tell you how to heal the planet. That means the king must take back his throne. Haru. Haru is your will. What is your will? Well, essentially who you are is you have a free will. Now, most people misinterpret that as you have a right to choose. No, that's not what it means. Free will doesn't mean you have a right to choose, but in an indirect way, yes, it means that. But it means that who you are, which is consciousness, the self is free from any emotional compulsions. You are free from the idea of pain, pleasure, likes, dislikes. You have no propensity to anything. You're not attached to 3D or third dimensional thinking, which is stuck in concrete, earthborn thinking attached to physical things. You are essentially free from all of that. You have no likes, you have no dislikes. You don't color things by placing labels and definitions on them. That is the meaning of a free will. Not just the only way that you can choose is to be free to choose first. Because if you are dictated by the mammalian and the reptilian brain complex, then you are not free to choose. Your actions are dictated by emotional compulsions. This is why the highest state that you aspire to be is not just Osir, but it's Amen. Amen is that energy. Amen is the absence of all of that. Amen actually is the hidden, that which cannot be perceived, that which cannot be felt, taste. But it is there. It is everywhere. This is why when you have these nincompoops running around saying stupid stuff about so-and-so is God or this is God, you can't associate God to any one thing. Because God is everything. Nectar is everything. Hence, no one thing. And God is you. Let's not forget that. God is you. When you say God, you are referring to yourself. Literally. This is why we have to get into the idea and understanding that who our true selves are is God. Our higher state is God. So the ruling elite has an interest in you remaining in 3D thinking, because when you die, then you're going to have to be reborn. You're going to have to deal with your karma, because you're going to go before the judgment scene, and Ma'at's going to have your heart weighed against a feather, and that means you're going to have to be lighthearted, because your heart's going to have to weigh lighter than the feather on the scale. And you're going to face Tahuti, the scribe, and he's going to read back to you everything that you've done in your lifetime. And he's going to say, the agreement that you had made, your higher self made an agreement. When you passed on, you confronted Thought Tahuti, and you made an agreement. Now, why would you make this agreement? Because Source, Nectar, God, wants to experience things. He, she has infinite potential, infinite wisdom, infinite knowledge, infinite power, but no experience. The reason why he has no experience, because in the beginning there was the only one. And where there's only one, there's nothing to interact with. So therefore, you cannot experience anything because there's no individualization of things. So God needs your help. So God creates a holographic experience with infinite scenarios to experience. And God, in his divine wisdom, wants to do things in a very orderly fashion and say, every person that comes to Earth has to have a theme or an idea that they are exploring. So when you make your deal with Tahuti, Tahuti says, okay, you're going to experience unrequited love. Do you agree to this? And then your higher self, not your lower self, the animal spirit, your higher self says, yes, I agree to that. So then you pick who you'll be born to, the family line that you'll come into. You pick that. So if you were abused as a child, raped as a child, or robbed or murdered at a very young age, understand these are things that your higher self chose to experience. And I know it may sound, wow, that's kind of cruel. But you have to understand, You are consciousness that will live forever. You have been and always will be. So you do not really experience pain. So with that idea in mind, your higher self, who knows that pain is not really, it doesn't really exist, will agree to these things, will agree to trauma, will agree to being poor, a hobo on the street, to help God experience these different scenarios. God wants, it's like a movie. God wants to experience all the characters. God wants to experience the sidekick, the love interest, the evil guy. God wants to experience all of that. And God experiences through you. God created the physical aspect of this fourth dimensional world as a holographic scenario so that he could interact with himself to experience these things. And to have multiple lives, infinite number of them, because there's so much God can experience in infinity, so much to experience. I-Ching, Alvarez, Hetepu. All right, very good question. So I'm curious, where did the term God come from? I'm asking the most sincere way that the term God come from. I'm not. Are you asking where God came from, or where the word God itself? I don't understand, because the word God is a Western European language, because we call God Nebecher or Neter. So if you can just clarify, I don't understand what your question is. Third presence, Atepu, you wanted to know, you said, what would you say is the best strategy to invoke the synchronistic nature of reality? How do you properly do this and not be too desperate to scare them away, so to speak? Synchronicity is something that you can experience by doing a lot of meditation and dwelling upon a thought and an idea while in the meditative state. That keys in synchronicity. And there's also a specific vibrational frequency for synchronicity. If you email me, I can send you the resonance tone for it. And if you listen to it, you'll find that you'll have synchronistic experiences. Okay? So, yes, the term God itself, yes, you pronounced it right. So we didn't refer to God as God. Remember, the English language has been removed of the vibrational frequencies that were embedded within in the way we spoke in ancient languages. They were always, when we spoke, we made sure, like in Spanish, you have a rolling R, you know. We spoke with the tones of the language, and those tones would command and materialize things in our world, in the fourth dimensional experience. And that's how we lived a magical life, you know. This is how sophisticated our ancestors were, that they were able to create the language, that the language was embedded with mantras or cows, that when you would talk, for example, you would say my name, the way you would say it with that resonance frequency would manifest something into this fourth dimensional experience. So I don't want to get too much into that because I want to stay on the topic. So going back to what I was saying is that we make this agreement to experience certain things. And when we assist God in experiencing these things, whether we believe are good or bad, because really good or bad in 5D thinking, there's no such thing as good or bad in 5D thinking. As the famous Chinese oracle says, everything, the I-Ching, everything serves to further. So you're placing an erroneous label on something, labeling as good or bad, when Neter, who you are, your true essence, doesn't see it that way. It sees it as serving God, so that God can have this experience. And when I say to you, don't get wrapped up in this lifetime because you're going to have an infinite number of experiences, I'm truly saying that. Now, you can stop that reincarnation process simply by ascending to 5D thinking to become an honored ancestor, a Shepsu. Because once you achieve that type of thinking, a 5D thinking, you will be able to stay in the inner planes and guide humanity in the right direction. Because when you are reborn and you're reincarnated and you're assigned what we would call guardian angels or ancestors. They're assigned to you to help and guide you. Now, the problem that we encounter is that we don't understand the messages, or we turn off to their voice, because society is socially engineering us not to believe in the occult or the new age, stuff. So we ignore the ancestors who have come here to guide us and help us. Now, let's get this understanding straight, that the wisdom and knowledge that has been left here for us to follow on is the wisdom and knowledge that has already fell apart and been disassembled. Because the true knowledge of Kemet, of Atlantis, has been all but destroyed. So rebuilding that society, we'd have to access the Akashic records now. So what do I mean by that? That you're only getting little tidbits of the wisdom and knowledge. You're not getting the whole thing. But it's okay, because you're going to help resurrect or help piece it all back together again. All right? So when you pass on, when you die, as we call it, you go before the judgment scene. This is where Christianity got the whole judgment thing from. You go before Ma'at, you go before Tehuti, you go before Sebek or Anubis, and you weigh your heart. So your heart must weigh lighter than the Ma'at's feather. So it means that you cannot have formed any emotional attachment to anything. That's the key of life, to be in the world but not of it, to not form these emotional attachments, to be lighthearted. So no matter what happens to you in life, you take it with a grain of salt, a light heart. You go, someone just robbed me of $500. That's interesting. That's an experience. Okay. Oh, my mate just lied and said that baby that I've been taking care of for 10 years, or that child for 10 years, is not really mine. It belongs to another man. That's an experience. You don't get angry. You don't get bitter. You don't get hostile, because you take those emotions and you internalize them. And it changes the heart. The heart is an intelligence. And that if you are caught up in your emotional aspect, Sahu, then you're tied to 3D, third dimensional thinking. So you will keep being reborn and reincarnated. Now, I don't want to mislead you, because the idea of ascending to fifth dimensional thinking, of becoming an honored ancestor or a Shepsu, to where you can stay in the inner planes and experience bliss and oneness and guide the planet, is not easy. Not easy. And most people, the majority of people on the planet, don't achieve that until after many reincarnations, to many, many reincarnations, because you grow from the experience and you learn, and you're supposed to take that knowledge with you from every lifetime. But the ruling elite try to cut that communication off, so that you go bring with you your past knowledge of your past life. Now, one of the things that we're learning, and I kind of alluded to this before, is that the knowledge that we have now is kind of fragmented and not the real complete knowledge that our ancestors left for us, because we've been cut off from that, is the idea of linear thinking, that there's a past, present, and future. Well, if you understand that there only is the now moment, and there is no past, there is no future, there's only this now moment, and within this now moment is kind of like a unified thing, or a singularity, to where everything exists in the same space, then you understand the secret to all of this. So in other words, as you sit here, you are experiencing your past life right now. As you sit here, you're experiencing yourself in parallel universes right now. This is why when you go to an oracle reader, a diviner, and you do a reading on your past life, you could get one thing at that particular moment and come back 2 weeks later and then get another thing that's totally opposite of that. And you wonder, well, what's going on? The reason is because of your emotional attachment at that particular time and moment, you tune into a specific past life because you've had many, many past lives. So you may be close and receiving a download from that past life right now. And then another time you'll receive a download from another past life. Just like the idea that you could have lived, let's say, in the Victorian era, but you're receiving information, a download from Alpha Centauri, from a planet, not even that, let's just say Zeta Reticuli, that you existed on the other planet as an alien. And your soul has been reincarnated here as a star child. But you're saying that's a contradiction. How could I have been in the Victorian era and also been from another planet? Remember, everything exists is in the same space, and that there is no past, no future. Everything exists simultaneously, happening instantaneously. So those experiences of you in the Victorian era and you as an alien on another planet are existing simultaneously right now, and you're downloading information from each one and you're receiving that information. There's no linear past that you're getting information from. Well, in the past, you know, I was a wealthy businessman. No, you're a wealthy businessman right now in that past life right now that you are erroneously using the term passed on. Shout out to Cincinnati, Ohio. So I want you to get that. And that's where a lot of priests and priestesses mess up, because they start talking about your past life experience. You mean my present life experience? Because that's really what it is. Because there's only the now moment. Therefore, there's no past life. Because what you perceive as the past and the future are merely shifts in perspectives on things. You can download for any life experience that you have had because you're having it right now. You can say I was Emperor Septimus Severus in Rome or wherever, and I lived in the Roman era. And, well, you mean you're living in the Roman era right now? Yes, that's what's happening. You mean you're living in Kemet right now? When I went to a priestess and she did my reading on my past life, she said, oh, you were a priest in Kemet. I said, well, that makes sense. And she said, the oracle says you should pursue that to further the field and to help to shift the planet to the fifth dimensional thinking. And I had no interest in Egypt and all that. And the priestess told me this. I said, well, I really don't like ancient Egypt culture. I don't like that. She says, no, you're consciousness. You're beyond likes and dislikes. She said, study that, go after that. And I bet you'll start to like it. And she was so right. As I studied about the hieroglyphics, the Metanetta, ancient Kemet, I started to really get involved. And I said, this is really cool. And then when I went to the museums and I saw the tombs and the sacred artifacts that were left behind, I had a panic attack. I couldn't breathe because I knew that these were things and objects that I had experience with back in ancient Egypt. And it was very difficult for me to walk through the museum and to see those things and to re-experience those things. It was very difficult for me. And I remember one day going to Barnes & Noble bookstore. This is when they had the bookstores all over the place. Out of nowhere, I didn't even believe in reincarnation. I didn't believe in like the afterlife and all that. And I pick up this book on this guy, Benjamin Banneker, famous scientist. And I started flipping through the book, and I don't even know why I picked up this book, to be honest with you. And I started looking through this book, and I came to a picture of him. And then when I saw the picture, I had another panic attack. I couldn't breathe. And my girlfriend was there, and all I kept saying to her was, that's me. That's me. I recognize that is me. And then from that point, I made an appointment with the priest. And I said, I need you to do a reading for me. I don't know much about this Benjamin Banneker person, but I need you to tell me if that was me. And he did the reading, and he just looked down there, and he looked up at me. He says, yes, you were Benjamin Banneker in your past life. And I was like, holy shit. And then everything made sense. My mother always freaked out how I love bugs. I read his biography, you know, and he loved bugs. My mother was wondering why I was so into inventions and things like that. And he was an inventor. And she says, you, as a child, you were so fascinated with bugs and inventing, and you loved grandfather clocks. And turned out that Benjamin Banneker built a clock. And it all made sense. And I loved astronomy. Turns out he was an astronomer. So I was merely just picking up what I did in the past life. So then the priest said, I want you to go out there, and I want you to buy every book you can on Benjamin Banneker. And I want you to research your past life so that you can remember everything that you did. And I remember him reading that he wrote almanacs. And I said, well, I love writing. I write papers. I write lots of PDFs that I give out, you know? Now I knew I had a course. I had the North Star, a guiding light to where I would direct my life to. I could read about my past life and know the problems that I had. And one of the problems was alcoholism, which is why in this lifetime, I wanted to stay away from alcohol, because I knew that I had an addictive personality. If I started, I would never stop. And one of the things that I knew is that tobacco terrified me. Anything that had to do with cigarettes or smoking really scared me. It made me just unnerved. I found out he worked on a tobacco farm. And that made sense. Now, when you discover your past life and understand what you did in your past life and what you have to complete in this lifetime, it brings everything into perspective, and now you become a whole and complete person. You no longer run around with, what's my destiny? What am I supposed to do in this lifetime? I'm lost. And it wasn't a coincidence that when my family moved to New York, because we were in New York State for a time being, I remember specifically us living next to a school. I think it was a junior high at the time. Was it junior high? I think it was junior high. And I remember having to walk by this school every day on my way to work, and didn't really pay any attention to it. And then one day I was like, I wonder what is this school? And I happened to look up, and the school's name was Benjamin Banneker. And I said, look at that. I chose to reincarnate in this family line to see the fruits of my labor in my past life. And then to understand now where the direction I needed to go into the future. Oh, yes, I can recall experiences. The experiences that you will recall, unless you go into if you go into past life regression through hypnotherapy, Deborah, is that I recall things and you will do this too, from a strong emotional aspect. Some recall actual visual, they can see certain things that have happened to us or happened to them. Others will feel the emotions. You know, one of the things that Banneker faced was loneliness. And I've always had an issue with that. Not that well, I like to be alone. And that's something that I had to fight, because in African society, and to be a priest, to get to that level, you have to be involved in the community. where I was isolated. I like to be isolated. I like to be alone. And I had to understand where that came from. But now, don't get it twisted now, because I'm a star child. So at that same time, in experiencing my past life as Benjamin Banneker, I had to recognize that I also had ancestry to alien ancestry to a planet that was far away. And I had to go to a priest and oracle to validate that as well, because just because you feel something, experience something, doesn't mean it's true. And the oracle Tahuti is the word of God, and that's the final determinant of something is right or wrong. But the main thing is that we, especially children, we have to pay attention to what they say, because it's very important, because children have a very clear memory of their past life. And in fact, children are ancestors. They have come from a past life and reborn, and those children have chosen to be reborn into your family line. So look at the habits, the behaviors of your child. Then you will understand what they did in their past life. Because, you know, scientists have done this study, psychologists, and they realize that certain children have certain phobias that they're too young to have those phobias. So where do those phobias come from? It came from their past lives. Now, how do you know who you were in your past life and what you're supposed to do in this life? Well, you need to go to and do an oracle reading. Or you need to go to a hypnotherapist and have a hypnosis session where you have past life regression. And that's probably one of the best things to do, because you can actually re-experience it as it's going on here and now. I've often told these so-called scholars about stop reading books about history and to experience history, go into a state of deep trance and to experience it, because history is going on right now. History is not the past. History is happening right now, because it's all one, past, present, future, all one. You're experiencing it right now. It's only how you project your consciousness. You can project your consciousness into any time period, anywhere. Modern science calls this time travel, and they think you need a time machine to do it. You don't. How do you, see, that's the problem with our world. How do you start out with an erroneous premise and then try to concoct a solution around the erroneous premise? In other words, let's say, well, we want to find Noah's Ark, so we're going to send an expedition out there to find any evidence of Noah's Ark. Well, so you've set up this premise that there was a real Noah's Ark, and now you're trying to come up with a way to find it, which is just bogus. So you think there's a past, present, and future. So now you got to come up with a time machine so that you can go into the past, which doesn't really exist. That's an erroneous term. And we know that time is an illusion. It's not real. At best, it's relative, is what Einstein was saying. So how could you build a time machine on a false premise? And you can't build a time machine to go into the future to visit your future self, because you left the present. So there is no future self to visit. Paradox. But if you understand, as our ancestors taught us, that you can re-experience any time period because it's happening in the now moment right now, it's only a matter of you just projecting your consciousness onto that perspective and that experience through a vibrational frequency. Now you're dealing with truth. So we want to talk about being obedient to God, to serving God. Then the best way that we can serve God is to understand our past life and then continue on the mission. Because the mission that God has sent us is to experience the theme or the destiny of our lives. And we are coming to this existence not only with ancestors, but with something called an oversoul. And this oversoul is collecting information from us. We're uploading the information to the oversoul, and the oversoul is communicating that information to Nebuchadnezzar. Actually, Nebuchadnezzar means Lord of the universe. So your oversoul is taking the uploads from you. So when you constantly see yourself in this lifetime caught in this karmic experience, meaning you keep experiencing the certain scenarios in your life, like hooking up with the wrong woman, hooking up with the wrong man, getting physically abused, getting robbed, constantly having trouble in relationships, constantly having trouble with money. That may be because in your past life, you experienced that and you need to resolve that issue in this life so you can move on to your next theme. Because each lifetime you're going to experience, you have to experience different themes. You're given that mission and you must complete that mission. Now, the mission is for you as you go with each lifetime is to spiritually grow with each life experience so that you can ascend to fifth dimension. But the ruling elite want to keep you from doing that. They don't want the souls of the planet to ascend to 5D. And the way they keep you from ascending is to keep you in third dimensional thinking, 3D thinking. Because the more you're trapped and caught up in emotionalism and in the acquisition of material objects, so that when you go before thought or Tahuti would be like, and they weigh your heart, and your heart is weighs more than the feather, then you have to come back and do it again. And you're going to keep coming back until you learn to keep your heart still. The term min eben alken ma'at. Min eben alken ma'at means to keep the heart still, to live truth. So when your heart is not constantly beating at everything that comes along and excited at everything that comes along, and it stays still, stilling of the heart, metaphorically speaking, so that you don't get excited over these things, so that you can now start to ascend to 5D. And then you will ascend and phase out the ruling elite, the Illuminati. Then you will shift to a world where they don't exist. But until that point comes along, they're going to do everything they can to keep you becoming reborn and reborn and reborn again. They want you to do that. They want to keep your soul being reincarnated. Your goal is to stop that process. Stop the reincarnation process. Because everybody that has gone to 5D and higher has all a consensus said that it was the most blissful and loving experience they've ever had, and they did not want to leave. And this existence, this fourth dimensional holographic experience, read Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe, is just one among many levels and planes of existence that we are experiencing. And we're experiencing this for a reason, to help Netter gain knowledge from this level of existence. If you guys can hit the like button, I really would appreciate it. When we want to get the likes up on this video, that would be great.
Now available on paperback.
And be sure to share this video, because I want to try to reach 5,000 subscribers. That would be great. That would be wonderful, actually. And if you get an opportunity, subscribe to the channel. Donate to the channel. That'll help me to continue on writing the ebooks and doing the videos and things of that nature. So try not to be afraid of death. Try not to be afraid of the idea of being reborn again. But try to research your past life to understand what you did, because it will explain so much about why you act the way you act in this life, why you're born into certain circumstances. If you're born into a family that's impoverished, it's not your fault. You weren't set up for success, but your higher self did choose that family line to come into for a reason. And most people I know who are priests and priestesses on a high level have something in common. I noticed that they were abused as children. And such is the case with me. And I said, well, why is that? Well, it was that childhood trauma that pushed us all into the study of the esoteric. So it made sense, because if we had come into fully functional families that went along with the conventional mode of thinking, we would not been pushed into studying the occult. We would not have done it. So we had to come through a family line that was somewhat abusive, somewhat harsh, somewhat unjust, to make us understand what justice, truth, and righteousness was about, and to help the planet. And yes, the circumstances that you find yourself in, you chose to come into that. You chose those circumstances. Your higher self chose those. So you made that agreement with Tahuti to experience that. And Tapu, the only one, a good oracle reader. Well, I tell you, I'm an oracle reader. You mean a diviner, actually, that's what the name is. So you can set up an appointment with me. You can go to my website, kasankmaakeparu.com, and you can sign up for a reading. You can also type in the word tarot into YouTube, and you will come up with a plethora of tarot readers. And a lot of them are some of them not so good. A lot of them are good. And you may need to go to one or two of them before you can find someone that you're comfortable with. I am in a community of Wiccan women, and they're very good. And there's some I can recommend to you that can do a reading for you if you want. I can make a recommendation. They're very good. Actually, even I have one that I go to. He is very, very good, and he does my readings whenever I get into a jam. And so, because sometimes even if you're a high priest or priestess, you need objectivity. And sometimes you can get caught up in emotionalism. You need somebody to validate or do a reading for you so you can step away from it emotionally and hear the objective truth about it. Okay? Deborah, that's good. If you were, she says, I was visited by an Asian man in a dream years ago who said I was him in a past life. That is awesome. That is awesome. So I would take that and go to a diviner and do a reading on that and find out more. Specifically do a reading with the I-Ching, because I-Ching will give you a depth of wisdom to follow on that. So one of the first things that you must do with the child that comes into its existence is to understand that child is an ancestor, and you should not be physically abusing that child. You must respect that child as an ancestor, and you must do a reading, a destiny reading for that child. Two readings that are important. The first reading is going to be the incarnation objective. Find out why that child came back and what that child has to deal with in this life. The second reading is a career reading. Find out what career field that child needs to be in. And that will give you a hint as to what that child did in the past life. My career reading was Tahuti. Okay, so I knew that, hey, I'm coming into this lifetime with the idea of getting into the priesthood, being an inventor, being someone who changes the paradigm, changes the thought process, breaks the mold. So, oh, the only one, yeah, just email me. Just email me at kasank@gmail.com and tell me what you want. I can make a recommendation. Claretta Hatepu, yes, just email me and I can give you a recommendation on some really good readers. Because I always say, you don't have to stick with me as a reader. I can recommend some readers to you. But anyway, on that subject matter, let's go back to once the child comes in, you do the readings. Now you have a direction to take that child. And the next thing you need to do is make sure you give that child a proper name. The name will be based on their incarnation objectives, what they've come into this lifetime to experience. So if you notice my name, Kisank Ma'akeparu, I'm named after the goddess Ma'at, meaning I have to live truth in this lifetime. Because I had some issues with consistency, truth, and balance in the past life. So those issues now must be corrected in this lifetime. And by taking on my name, my Kemetia name, and by you repeating it in the correct way, it helps to formulate that reality and helps to give me the right energy so that I can experience that. This is why names are important when you're naming people. This is why you yourself, you need to make sure that your name is a reflection of your destiny in this lifetime. And that you do not just accept the name arbitrarily. It's also why when I refer to individuals, I say, you are God. And if you want to trip somebody else up, when they ask you your name, say, I am that I am. That'll trip them out, yes. I brought myself into being to have the experience. So that's what it's all about. And when you start to delve into your past life, you may find some very interesting and wonderful things about who you were. You may have been a rich man, a rich woman. You may have been involved in some natural catastrophe or, some geological event. You may have been a priest. You may have been a soldier, a warrior. You may be a woman who died in childbirth. And remember, you have had a lot of lives, a lot of lives. And for those of you who discover another wonderful thing, that you are a star child, that means you have ancestry on another planet. And that you were sent here specifically to help guide the planet. And now you'll need to dive into more about that. Well, what type of star child are you? Are you an indigo? Are you a crystal? Are you a rainbow? Because each one of them has a specific mission that they must accomplish. Your alien parents, your ancestors, sent you here as one of three to fulfill an objective. So if you're like me and indigo, you have to break down the current paradigm. You have to break down society. You have to destroy society, so that it can be rebuilt and reestablished by the rainbows and the crystals. And I'll do another video on this another time. So keep that in mind. And also, open up to the wisdom and knowledge of your ancestors. They're trying to communicate with you. Allow them to guide you and to push you in the right direction. And you may find yourself like I was in a bookstore, and you may grab a book and it may just be you in a past life. And that's how it works, because our ancestors are pushing us in certain directions, because when you open your mind to these things, they will help you. They will guide you. They'll put you in circumstances that are to your benefit and that will give you an enhanced understanding of your past life and what you must do in this lifetime to complete the goal. Remember, the objective of the ruling elite is to keep you reincarnating, to keep you a victim of karma. But you have to learn to break that cycle. And the only way to break that cycle is through the integrated whole brain thinking and listening to 5D. Because that's a game changer. Once you start doing that, once the planet starts doing that, everything stops. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. And I hope I presented some information and knowledge that will basically enhance your understanding of the world, of the planet, and of your lineage. Research your lineage. And put up a shrine to your ancestors. And when you do that, they'll lead you to understanding who you were in the past life. And remember, you'll be connecting with the past life that you have an affinity with at a particular moment in time. Because you may be going through certain circumstances and troubles that will call for you to access and download information from that life that you're experiencing now in the present now moment. But it changes according to what you need. So this is Kasak Ma Keparu, son of Tuti and Ma'at. Till my next broadcast, I'm in Ra.